Hello folks, it's PanDaddyPowa for a new epic tutorial. One video, several topics surrounding Launchbox, free and premium version that brings different features to the free version, but also a wonderful UI interface called BigBox that will make all your friends so excited that they will stay home very late playing games with you. And I will start right away showing you what you will get at the end of this tutorial. Oh my god, pretty amazing, isn't it? Once upon a time I was using Hyperspin, and I really liked it, at least at the beginning. The interface was really stunning, but I was frustrated with a lot of glitches, crashes, and various bugs that made me crazy about it. Also, it was hell to import media if the name wasn't the exact one expected by Hyperspin, so you ended up with games not recognized correctly and everything screwed up. A bit frustrating, you know what I mean? Then I looked for alternatives. I found a software called Launchbox that looked promising. I have been using it for years now, not necessarily actively, but I had some frenetic periods of retro gaming, and so I used it a lot, installing it on different computers, mainly, and it works generally like a charm. Here is a complete guide on Launchbox, from the initial installation, the setup of the different main emulators, paired with Retroarch, which has been embedded into Launchbox directly for a while now. Also, I added some chapters in this video so you can jump from a specific section to another easily depending on your interest or where you are. If you are ready, it's time to start this epic tutorial. What is Launchbox? Launchbox started off life as a graphical interface for DOSBox, an emulator for all DOS games. It's now much more, offering support for modern games and other emulation platforms. It means that in the same dashboard, you can have your favorite Nintendo games, your original PlayStation games, and your modern games collection. Battlefront 2 will sit nicely next to Duke Nukem 3D, for instance. Without going into much details, because today we'll see a typical Windows 11 installation, Launchbox could be installed on a Linux system also. However, and as of today, there is some work still needed to stabilize the Linux version. RetroArch, on the other hand, is a front-end for emulators, game engines, and media players. It enables you to run classic games on a wide range of computers and consoles through a sleek graphical interface. Settings are also unified, so configuration is done once and for all. In addition to this, you are able to run original game discs, CDs, from RetroArch directly, if you still have a CD or a DVD player on your computer, of course. In terms of features, we can mention shaders, netplay, rewinding, next frame response times, run ahead, machine translation, blind accessibility features, and a lot of other cool stuff. As a global question, is it legal to emulate a game?
Oh no, the guy is going to be boring. It's just the beginning of the video and he's talking about boring stuff. Boo!
Okay, calm down. It's important for you to understand what could happen and what you could potentially be exposed to. Anyway, if it's still an issue for you, you can just jump to the next section. Before we start, I would like to mention that the following explanations are based primarily upon US copyright law, because I based all my research there. However, many places have similar copyright laws, so chances are high for you to be concerned by what I will say there. First, we need to split software and hardware because due to some nonsense in history, they are protected by a different set of rules and regulations. Software is protected by copyright, the same mechanism that protects written works, works of art, film, music, and so on. Copyright is exactly what it sounds like, the right to copy. Unless you're explicitly given the right to copy, you don't have it by default. On the other hand, hardware is protected by patents. There are different parts involved in the act of emulating a game. You need an emulator, of course, and a ROM. In other words, the game itself in a file format that the emulator can read and then manage all the inputs, memory allocations, CPU translations, and a lot of things for you so you can interact and concretely play the emulated game. Emulation of hardware does not violate patent law. Patent law was designed to protect innovation, but allow reasonable competition. So there's a lot more leeway in what is legal. In particular, emulation is not a reproduction of the actual hardware schematics, it is merely an invention with the same intent. In principle, you can violate a patent without knowing it, because a recreation of something which you didn't know was patented is a violation of the patent. Copyright is altogether different. You can see it like a software actually being a form of art, as it is considered as an intellectual property. Copying that art is illegal. Creating something with the same function of that art is perfectly legal since, well, traditionally art doesn't have a function. So, as a quick sum up, so far, an emulator is not illegal, a ROM is. But there is an exception. Modern copyright law protects your right to backup software. In principle, as long as you do not distribute copies, you are allowed to copy for backup purposes, the content you own and that you legally bought. So having a ROM created from your original copy is legal. But there is another part of the emulation flow involved, depending on the emulator, the BIOS files. Usually some consoles have included software, while some have been entirely hardware. The software of such a system is called the BIOS. Whether you require a BIOS file or not is a consequence of both the particular design of the console and how easy it is for some hacker to create alternative software which serves the same purpose. If the console never included BIOS software in the first place, then obviously none is needed. If the console did include BIOS software, but its function can be reproduced by reverse engineering the original BIOS, then that alternative software may be okay, as it's the case in some PSX emulators. However, the reason why the original software cannot be included is simply that software and hardware are protected by different regulations, copyright versus patent. That's why you will generally never see an emulator distributed along the required BIOS files, because it would make the emulator illegal. Coming back to ROMs now, if you own a legitimate copy of the original ROM for a game, or a BIOS or CD, then you are allowed to have additional copies as long as you don't distribute them. However, it will still be technically illegal for you to download these files from an internet site that has no license to distribute them. It will be very difficult and pointless to take action against you for this, since it is difficult to prove and constitutes no damages, because in the end, the company would not get anything from you, only from the party you downloaded from. The party that you downloaded from is the one that could get into real trouble for this. Because to be legal, it should, first, has obtained the authorization from the game companies, and two, give a percentage on each downloaded copy of games, so acting like any traditional distributor. In theory, your sanction for downloading the ROM could be a fine for contributory infringement. You can legally obtain these ROMs either by dumping them yourself or by having a friend dump your ROMs and returning the ROMs and the original copies at the same time. If I take an example, let's say you own a copy of Super Mario World. You can, of course, play it on the original console itself. But what you would really like to do is play it on your phone or your laptop, for instance. In this case, downloading a ROM could be legally defensible. At the end, you're just playing a game you already own on your phone. You're not giving the game to anybody else, so there's no market harm here. It's not substituting for a purchase. Nintendo of America took the same stance against the distribution of Super NES ROM image files. in the use of emulators as it did with the NES, insisting that they represented flagrant software privacy. Proponents of Super NES emulation said that discontinued production of the original hardware, constituting abandonware status, the right of the owner of the respective game to make a personal backup via devices such as the Retroad, space shifting for private use, the desire to develop homebrew games for the system, the frailty of Super NES ROM cartridges and consoles, and the lack of certain foreign imports. Nintendo designed a hobbyist development system for the Super NES, but never released it. Finally, a dedicated mini console, the Super NES Classic Edition, was released in September 2017 after the NES Classic Edition. Then we can say this argument could be added to the one concerning the fact that you already own the game. At the opposite, the argument becomes obsolete as soon as a game or a set of games is available. We can cite, for instance, Genesis Classic software, the mini Genesis console, the NES and the Super NES Classic Edition consoles, or Sonic games you can play now on iOS or Android, for instance, with official releases. So what you will find in this guide? So if you listened carefully to the previous section concerning legal stuff, you understand that this guide has been made for educational purposes and not to show you how to crack copy protection, download ROMs, or get BIOS for any emulators requiring one. However, no worries, you will see the complete guideline to set up your dreaming emulation station, including where you have to put all the necessary files to make this happen. The only thing I won't show you are potential links or any storage space access where you can get ROMs or BIOS. Also, Launchbox and Retroarch are totally legal, in the way they are pure front-end, and it's only these two softwares that we are gonna configure together in this tutorial. And for people who argue that RetroArch is illegal, I would say that it does not come packaged with any ROMs, and as I said previously, yes, emulators are legal. Now that all that stuff has been said, let's practice. So, to set up your dreaming emulation station, we will need first to install Launchbox. To install Launchbox, it's pretty easy. You go on the website launchbox-app.com, and from here you click on download depending on the platform you are on, Android or Windows. In my case, I will just download from Windows. I will click on download, but first I have to enter my email address because it won't work if I am not entering my email address here. It's a specificity from Launchbox here. So I will enter my email address, and then if I click on download, the link of the download of the exe file has been sent to my email. So I just have to go onto my email and check what I received, and look at what I received into my spam here. Okay, so it's very important that you check in your actual inbox, but also to check into your spam also. And here I have a link. Okay, I have a link here, so I can go there and download the exe file. It's downloading right now. It is wonderful, and now finished, I can launch the exe file. Just to mention that it could be detected as a virus or a Trojan, but you have to keep it. Honestly, it's I would say it's a sure source. Okay, so no worries about it. You don't have to be afraid of launching the exe setup coming from Launchbox. So I open the file. I will install it. So you select the language. You accept the agreement. Generally, we don't read everything, so fine. You install it whatever you want, but my advice here is to choose a place where you have some availability, space availability, because Launchbox will download a lot of images for your different ROMs. It will download, if you pair Launchbox with EmuMovies, it will download a lot of videos, and it could be very heavy. So my advice here is to install it on a hardware where you have a lot of space. So I would just click OK here because I know that I have minimally one, or yeah, so at least this number of 3D space is required, but my advice is to go really above this. So I click on next, we create an icon, fine, install. It's installing right now. It won't be long, and it will install DirectX SDK if it's not already installed. okay, I have an error here, I don't know what's happening, but I'm pretty sure it will work, right? Okay, it's working pretty well. So now it's the first time that we are going into Launchbox after the setup, after the installation. As you can see, Launchbox is asking what you want to do first, because we don't have anything already into our library, so it's recommending some different default way to import game. As you can see, you can import ROM files. It will be the option that we are going to use the most into this tutorial, and the explanation is very simple. It's because we want to use RetroArch at, I would say, 90% of the time. We want to use RetroArch, and I will explain to you why later. You have the option to import MAME arcade games full set. It's an option that we are not going to use at all, because I want to show you how to use the MAME arcade games core into RetroArch, so you will be able to have a default binding and be able to apply some shaders onto your games also to make them pretty. It's totally optional, it's totally up to you, but I think it's the good way to go, especially for old games, you know. Just a quick information for you, it's very important to understand that this option is very specific, so you have to install first MAME arcade software that you can download on their website, and you have to say to Launchbox that your MAME arcade software is at the specific place here, because when you are choosing this option, Launchbox is using an existing MAME software to scan directly your ROM full set, okay? So it's very important to understand that specificity of this option. After that, you have the possibility to, or the capacity or the ability to import Amazon games, to import games from Origin Games. We will see later if it's possible and how to do it, but it's an option that you have here. So I confirm that it's totally possible. You can import your Epic games like Fortnite and things like that. GOG games also, so it's a competitor of Origin, Epic and Steam, for instance. You can import your Microsoft Store Xbox games and Xbox Pass also, Steam games, UbiConnect games, MS-DOS games, or install a specific MS-DOS game, or import generally Windows games. So all the games running on Windows that are not part of the different publishing software that is cited just before. So I just want first to go into the different menus like badges here. So badges, as you can see, is something that is for Launchbox Premium subscribers or lifetime payment. You can have access to Launchbox Premium, and the badges are included into Launchbox Premium. Basically, what is a badge is a small, I would say, a small sticker or a small picture appearing at the top right. It's showing a specificity of the game, and generally it will appear on the posters. Okay, when you are in the poster view or images view here, I said poster, but it's images view, you will see the badges appearing like game attributes. You can enable favorites, but as you can see, it's for premium subscription only. Image group, I think we don't have any issues to select something different. It's already included into the free version, so you have access to that, and you can group what will be displayed here after we import different set. You will be able to see different way of ordering them. Okay, you can arrange by different parameters here. You have the max players, you have the title. By default it's title, but you can use different version, status, star rating. So it's very interesting, especially if you want to play a very old game. You want something like order by release date or release date year, and you will be able to sort by this release date in a way that you see the older one at the top, so you can with confidence say that you can play the one that are on the top and that they are the older games into your library. So I will just let the title by default for now. The view, it's pretty self-explanatory. Here we have image view or list view. List view is like it's really close to I would say an Excel spreadsheet, you know, and you will see when we will import our first library. I will just let images view. You can show or hide different elements into the interface, into the UI. The sidebar that you can hide, the button bar, so a lot of stuff. At this point, it's something that I will let you play with. You can hide some games also. You have the ability to mark a game that is broken, because you will see that during your usage of Launchbox, but it's not due to Launchbox. It's not the fault of Launchbox. It's not due to RetroArch also, but sometimes when you are going to launch a game, it won't work, and you will desperately try with different emulator cores into RetroArch, and the game is not working anyway. So we can say that the game is broken. It could happen on some emulators that I would say didn't give a lot of love to their development, or simply because you have some missing part of a game. For instance, MAME is coming with some ROMs that you can download, and I will explain that also, you can have some parts that you should download separately because they are very big and they are not part of the initial ROM set. And if you're missing this file, the game won't work. So you will say that the game is broken, and you can simply hide whatever you want here, and especially the mark broken. So the game that you already tested, that you already marked for broken, won't be displayed here onto this list. Let's say you want also to check the games that don't have any videos or box front image, screenshot image clear. So you can manage better by filtering on these games that doesn't have the assets that you just check here. And you can go deeply onto them to add either manually or automatically with EmuMovies. You can ask for a specific download of a specific video or box or screenshot or whatever you see here. So media, you can ask Launchbox to autoplay videos. I would say that it's a little bit touchy and it could be very annoying, especially if you are going into your library game by game because you want to check like the description and things like that, and you have the video auto playing. It could be very frustrating. I would say that the default menu for that is very suitable to my specific needs, and we are talking only about Launchbox. So no worries, your videos will play into BigBox, as we will see later into this video. So you have the same option for music and shuffle music because you can have multiple musics per game. So it's very important to say I want to shuffle it, or it will take the first one into the directory. You can ask Launchbox to refresh all images or all missing media. So it will connect to the Launchbox database and check if images or anything like media assets is missing if you choose this option. And for this one, it will be all the images. So badges, it's the same. It's, I would say, some options that you have already here into the badges. I don't know why they put that here, but you can also change the view by the different image group. Okay, so it's the same entry, I think, that this one here. So it's not new for you. And RHBY, it's the same as this one here. So if we're going into the tools, we have the menu to import. It's basically, I would say, the same as the one we saw when we launched first Launchbox. It's very important to see that because it's not only into the main menu or when you arrived first into Launchbox that you have access to those options to import. And I would say that we are very lucky because we will use this menu a lot because you have to import platform by platform because you have some specificities to each platform. So you can't import like doing a big batch to import, for instance, 12 platforms at the same time. So we will go platform by platform directly from here. Manage, so you can manage your emulators, your platforms, your game controllers. We have also some menu entries here concerning the DOSBox. DOSBox is an emulator for DOS games. We have a special entry for RetroArch. So right now we will do that together. We will download and install. So as you can see, it's downloading and installing RetroArch. It's something that we want to do because we want to use the pair Launchbox and RetroArch to work, I would say, in an efficient way. You will see. Okay, cool. So Launchbox is saying RetroArch was installed successfully. If you come back to the menu here and you go on Manage RetroArch, you will be able to reinstall it. Because we never know, RetroArch can break for any reasons. I would say that it's a very stable software, honestly. So no worries, don't be afraid of that. You won't have a lot of breaks and software not running well, etc. But in some circumstances, you want to reinstall it. It could help you once in a while. You can update. It's a very important thing because Launchbox won't update for you RetroArch, especially because there is a dependency with the RetroArch because all the games will be launched through RetroArch. And if you have something running and stable today that you don't want to update because you are afraid of breaking something, it's something totally normal and natural. You don't want to update automatically RetroArch, right? So it's giving you the option to do it. Personally, every time I am thinking about updating RetroArch, I am updating it because, as I said before, it's a very stable software and the update is done not on the nightly branch, it's done on the stable branch. the main branch. So you don't have to be afraid to update. In here, it's when you want to script something for Windows games, CanVM games, or DOS-Boss games. We won't use that. Honestly, if you want to use them, it's something that you can do. But again, remember that we will use mainly RetroArch to launch our games through our platform in Launchbox. So those scripts here won't be usable in our configuration. So just to mention that. You have the opportunity to download, especially to update the metadata and the platform playlist category 10 video, update community star ratings because it could change during the time, and force and update games database metadata, so coming from Launchbox directly. We can audit all the games, so it will show you what is missing per games, and if it is missing something also, like the description and things like that. Launchbox is doing a very good job at checking games and identifying the games you will import here. But sometimes you have a specific very bad naming into some different files, and Launchbox won't be able to understand what the hell is this game, you know? So you have sometimes to go there to audit all games or the current platform if you have a current platform already selected, and check what is missing there. If it's a problem of naming, if it's a problem of video not available, it could be anything into the description or any part of the description that could be missing, and you want to go there to check. The scan, normally the scan is there to identify games that could be missing after having importing them, because you remove them in the meanwhile, could happen. And I will say that it could also check for added ROMs in any platform. You can clean up media, especially, as I said, you can remove different ROMs, you can delete a complete platform or complete system. Let's say you don't want to play anymore to Atari 2800, for instance. So you want to go there and to say clean up media. It will check the different medias that are attached to something that is missing, so a ROM or a game that is not there anymore, and it will just clean up, so basically delete all the stuff here. It could be interesting, especially if you are deleting hundreds of games because you don't want to play them anymore. It will give you more space by deleting the associated images or videos, so it's very important to go there, especially when you remove a lot of stuff at once. And for the file management, I will come back on this one later, because you have an option that every time you import some ROM files or some set, you will see Consolidate ROM for our current platform. It's an important thing here, so we'll see that later. But basically, file management is there to create or restore a data backup. What it means is that your local database could be saved and restored. It's very important, especially if you have, like, I don't know, 20,000 games into your library, and it could be very, very difficult. It could be hell to re-import all that stuff. You will be very happy when your computer crashes to be able to restore from a backup that you did before. And you have different options here. I won't go into detail here. You can export to Android. You have different options also. I won't go into all the options here, but you can change options for a box depending on what you want to download, and you can specify some priorities. It's very interesting to see that, though, because as you can see, the media, you don't have any choice, and as you can see, you can't download everything because it's not allowed into the free version, as you can see. So basically, you have a bunch of stuff that you can't do. As you can see, EmuMovie, you can use EmuMovies when you have the free version of Launchbox, but you have also, and we will see that later, you have also to have a premium subscription to EmuMovies to be able to download videos. And you have different options here: Steam, Retro, Achievement. You have an integration with OBS Studio. It's very interesting because you can automatically add OBS Studio recordings to Launchbox games. So you can use OBS Studio basically to record videos. Launchbox can automatically assign them to your games, and you have a tutorial here. I won't go into detail about that, but just to show you, you have the mapping for the game controllers if you want to use them into Launchbox again, because we are more going to use the controllers into RetroArch, but it could be interesting also for BigBox, but BigBox is, I will say, out of the box supporting the controllers, especially if you have an X input. And today I will use an Xbox One controller, so it's an X input one. What I would recommend you, if you can, okay, I will just check because I'm not sure. So I don't have VLC, okay? I will download VLC, and I will explain to you why after. It's because VLC is really better at playing videos than Media Player, especially when you have like very weird extension or a codec into the videos that are downloaded. So I will download VLC here for Windows, of course. All right. So I will install VLC. And so Launchbox will just use VLC to play videos. It's something that we are doing now. You can do later if you want to test what's going on with the media player. So you don't have to launch it separately. It will be just used into Launchbox. And it will be very important to use it, I would say, for BigBox, because into BigBox, every time you go on an item or a game, the video associated is played by default. So it's better to have a VLC media player than a Windows media player. Okay, alright, so it's very interesting, but now we want to import some games, right? So I will go into Tools, Import, I will go into ROM files, I will click on Next. Okay, so just to show you, here I have my my different set of ROMs. We will be configuring all of them, okay? Don't worry, it will be very fast. Why? Because I don't have a lot of games here, okay? I will start with the Atari 7800, and as you can see, I don't have a lot of ROMs here. What we want to see is how it will work, so the complete flow, and you will be able to set up that on your side. So I will go in Tools, Import, RomSet, and I will add folder. As you can see, you can add files. You can say I want to go into here and I want to select only these 4 there, you know. But it's not something that we will do. We will go into the directory directly and we want to import the directory completely. So I selected the one that I wanted, select folder, and I can add some other folders. The only thing that you have to keep in mind is that you have to target ROMs that are targeting, sorry for the redundancy, the same platform. So I can add several directories there, but all for Atari 7800. So I click on Next. It will detect normally automatically the platform you want to use. You click on Next. You want to choose this one that has been automatically configured, and we will see the different platforms it is supporting. So automatically download RetroArch core if missing, I will say of course, but at the same time we don't care because RetroArch, when downloaded by Launchbox, is coming with all the different default cores already downloaded, so it's not an issue here, but you don't have to uncheck that. This one is up to you. You can copy the files into the Launchbox Games folder, you can move the files into your Launchbox Games folder, or you can use the files in their current location. My advice here, generally, if you have only one computer, I invite you to use one of them, okay? Because basically you are copying or moving the files and you don't want to use the ROM, the same ROM, on another computer. If you have like 2 or more computers and you want to run Launchbox/RetroArch to play emulated games there, you have to consider the space used by your ROMs. If you are talking about Atari, it's not a big issue. If you are talking about PlayStation 2, it's becoming very heavy, okay? So generally when you have 2 computers or more and you want to play emulated games there, you just put your ROMs onto a specific computer and access via the network to the same ROMs, so you end up using the same space and being able to play on multiple computers. So I would use the last option, use the files in their current location, because in that case it's fine. I have a specific place for them and I don't want to move or copy them. So it will search for game information in the local metadata database. So we have all that stuff that will be imported and downloaded, so we will have some images. I won't configure EmuMovies for now. We will see what happens. And I will just don't touch anything. It will try to download PDF files for the game manual. It will also try to combine, it's by default, to combine ROMs with matching titles into a single game. I will come back on this one later and I will explain to you what is the purpose of that. I will click on Next. So what is interesting is that Launchbox is showing you all the games that is going to import. As you can see, we have very great naming here because our little friend already detected, I would say, the majority of games, and it was pretty easy for him. So we finish here. It's searching, refreshing local metadata from the Launchbox Games database, and it will look into the local metadata database. It's saving games, it's downloading some assets like posters, font, manual, everything related to the game. So far, it's very impressive. It's very sleek and very interesting to see what happened there. Wow. Right, so 170 media items were successfully downloaded. We are talking about media items, so basically assets concerning the games, because we don't have 170 games here, as you can see. And if I click on this one, I can see that it downloaded some pictures. We have a lot of information, like for what consoles it's associated, released on 1988, so it's a very old game. We have also the file name, the different information concerning the last playtime, so everything will be stored into the local database. So that's why I told you that it's very important if you want to create some data backup as soon as possible, so you keep all this information stored somewhere and you can restore them. And you have a complete description here, so it's beautiful. You have all that stuff here. So mainly pictures, as you can see, but it's already very interesting to get information about the game you want to play. And you can see that it created subsection consoles because we have platform category here, but you can show different things. You can show platform if you want to just to see platforms. If you click on platform category, you will have consoles and handheld and things like that, depending on the platform you're importing. You can have the publisher if you want to play Absolute Entertainment publisher games. The rating also, so we don't have anything rated. It wasn't able to find that. Star rating, so it's another thing that is important from another website, I don't know where, or database. Maybe the Launchbox one. And you can click, okay, so 5 stars, we don't have anything, but we have the 4 stars, and apparently Asteroids is a very important game here. So yeah, and Galaga and Centipede, I'm pretty sure you already played all those games. Maybe not on this platform, but depending on your age, but I'm pretty sure you already played those games in any other format. So we'll just go back to platform category, and let's say I want to play a game now, because it's very interesting to have like a wonderful library. It's very impressive, very interesting to be able to read anything on a specific game that we want to play, right? So I will go now on to manage emulators, and I will show you what are the default core RetroArch emulator cores that are, I would say, set up by default when you install from Launchbox. So here you have the detail of the emulator. Let's say here, especially here, I can go back here, but especially here you will add your emulators right there. Okay, it's the way it has always worked, I will say, into Launchbox, because before including or having RetroArch embedded into Launchbox was basically helping you to launch your different ROM files with specific emulator. So let's say, I don't know, I want to configure the Wii platform, for instance, and use the Dolphin emulator that I can download on their website without going through RetroArch. So I can say Dolphin. As you can see, Launchbox knows already Dolphin and is able also, so you just have to click here to download Dolphin, and you will go onto the website to download Dolphin emulator. Okay, so it's the way it has always worked, and it's the way that it's still working if you want to use this kind of system. So basically you go onto the different emulators one by one on their different website, you download the emulator. You have to configure on your own the different emulators, and there, if you're coming back here, you have to put the application path, some default command line parameters. You have to define some different parameters here, so you can test the simple command here to see what it will be at the end and how it will launch your ROM file with the emulator. But we're not going that way, right? We want to go into RetroArch. So RetroArch has been installed, and by default RetroArch is associated to different emulators. As you can see, we have a bunch of them. It's covering generally what you want to see on your dreaming emulator system. So let's say we have the Atari 7800 here. It's using a Pro System Lib Retro. I guess we are fine. I'm pretty sure it's like the default one. And we click on OK. We click on Close. And so as you can see, we didn't do anything. The platform here, the Atari platform here, is already associated into RetroArch, to a RetroArch core. If I launch a game, normally it should work. Alright, as you can see, it's working. Now I will turn on my wonderful controller, Xbox One controller. So it will be connected, and you will see appearing at the bottom an information saying that he found a Bluetooth X-Input controller compatible. So now you think you are in Launchbox, but you are not in Launchbox, you are in RetroArch. It means that basically the RetroArch is handling all the rendering of the games, okay? And is also managing the inputs by checking if you have any of them installed on your computer. And I will say that if it finds an Xbox One controller or an X-Input controller, it will use it and pair it to a specific slot into RetroArch, because depending on the platform, you can play with a colleague. So 2 players, you can have 3, 4, 5, 6, depending on the platform, you can play up to 8 players or more. So now, because it's the first time I'm coming here, to be able to access the RetroArch menu, I will push F1. Okay, so wow, now I am in the menu of RetroArch. At the bottom left, you can see what core is currently loaded, and it's very important to see what kind of options you can have onto this specific core. I will just go, so I pressed B on my Xbox One controller. I will just go into settings because it's the first time we're running RetroArch. I will go into input, I will go into hotkeys, and I will go onto menu toggle controller combo. I will click on it and I will ask for an L3 and R3 pushed at the same time. If you don't know what are L3 and R3, it's the two buttons you have just under the stick controllers on your X input controller, basically. So Xbox One also. So now if I push the two buttons at the same time, I will come back to the game and I repush it, I will come back here. So now I will go into the main menu and I will go into the quick menu. The quick menu is generally the menu where you want to go to configure everything related to the core and the game that are running currently on your RetroArch. The option here is a specific menu that we will go a lot, at the beginning at least. It's because it's exposing here the different options you have with the core, the specific core. For the Pro System core that is emulating Atari 7800, you will be able to have all these options, and it's really specific to this RetroArch emulator core, so to Pro System emulator. Okay, so you can change, for instance, we have by default thousands colors, but I want like millions. Okay, 24-bit. Audio filtering, like let's say, I don't know, I don't like how it sounds, and especially on Atari, apparently you had some very spike in the audio that could be very irritating. So you want maybe to activate this option. Okay, I won't do it because I like to be irritated, let's say, but it's something that you can do. You can have an audio filter level, joystick controller. So all the options specific to the emulator you are running will be into this specific entry. It's written here. Change the options for the currently running content. After that, you can change a bunch of stuff. I won't show you everything here. But I have also an entry that I want you to be aware of and to consider is the shaders. Shaders are really important because it will make your game really, really pretty. So to quit a game, you just have to press twice your S key on the keyboard and you come back here, okay? And that's it. As you can see, we launched our first platforms. Okay, now that you imported your Atari 7800 first platform, first system, first ROMs, we will now import other platforms. As you mentioned already, you didn't need any BIOS to do that, right? So it means that the Atari 7800 didn't have any BIOS software included with the hardware. But it won't be the case for all platforms, all consoles. So I will show you where you have to place your different BIOS files, but I won't show you, as I said before, where to get them. I will say that Google is your best friend for that. So to place your different BIOSes, you have to go into emulators, so into Launchbox first, emulators, RetroArch, and then you go to System, and you can place all your BIOS files here. So I'm doing a copy right now, it shouldn't be long. Okay, now we are done with the copy, and you will end up with something similar as what I have here on the screen. So basically, the different BIOS files will be there for different use cases in different platforms console. Now I will go into import ROM files. I will import the System 2600. I will go there into the ROM directory, select folder. It's exactly the same steps that you have to do with all the different imports. You import one by one the different platforms. It detected already the Atari 2600 here, RetroArch, and use the files in their current location. Next, next, next. So it's trying to import all that games here. Good, finish, and it will import the different RomSet. Okay, so here we go. Excellent. So I will try to run a game. All right, it's working. Excellent. So I will push L3 and R3 at the same time. I will go, so every time you run for the first time a new platform and you enter RetroArch, you have to do that actions. You go into options, so L3, R3, you go into options, and you check the different options that we have here. For me, here it's console display, so I don't want to change anything, but if you have a specific preference on, I will say, the size of the rendering, or if you want something more 60 FPS, for instance, you can also choose that one. For me, I will go with the CCAM 60. Okay, it's not working well. Or the PAL 60. So as you can see, it's not working well on TSC. CCAM, PAL. NTSC. Okay, nothing is working well. If I do auto, okay, I broke everything. So sometimes it will happen that you change an option and it broke right away. So I will choose Paul. I will push ESC twice to quit RetroArch, and then I will launch again the game. Okay, now it's working. As you can see, sometimes you have to reboot to be able to apply the good option here. So I can change the palette color, but I don't want the TV effect. If you want some TV effects, like S-Video, okay, it's interesting. RGB, okay, badly adjusted, something like that. So you have the same effects that you had during your childhood when you were on the old generation TVs. On my side, I will just turn off this option because I want something very sleek. The Pulse 60 is interesting, but I want to test also the CCAM 60. So we'll try to run this one. The color is not very great, right? So as you can see, you have to test different things. I will just let auto for this one. The NTSC aspects, you can change, but the issue here is that you have to reboot every time. But let's say I will put 120 and 120 for the Pulse, because I don't know if I have an NTSC display right now or Pulse. So we just go there. Okay, so now the picture is a little bit bigger, which is totally fine for me. So okay, and I have other options that I don't think are very interesting. One thing that you have to do, shaders, turn on the shaders, and you will load. My advice here is to load the XBR MLV4 multipass. This one is really awesome, but sometimes I like also the HQX4. It's a little bit less rounded, but it depends on what you like, right? So you have to test different shaders. You have a bunch of them. You can use the scale effects also. It's giving you a different rendering. Sometimes it's a little bit better than the original, and it's what you want. And sometimes it's really rounded, like the one I showed you before. The XBR MLV4 is very interesting. Once you are very happy with the shader you choose, you have to go into save, and you save core preset. You can do the global preset, but I don't think it's a good idea, because if you want after to use some emulators like PlayStation 2 that are really demanding on hardware resources, you will have some big latency. Your game will run slowly, something like 1 FPS, and you don't want that. Here we know that this core is totally fine with the shader we choose, but you can also go for the game preset. If you want, like for this game to have this shader and for another game have another shader, it's up to you. I don't think it's something that you want to go through, but if you have a lot of time to spend customizing your shaders per game, fine, go for it. So I will just go for save core preset. So every game I will launch later will be applied with the shaders, and I will have a better rendering. So I will push ESC twice now. Okay, now I will go on and import the next platform. I will go for an Atari 5200. So it detected the platform by default. And so as you can see, it's not proposing us any emulator. If you go in the list, you have RetroArch to choose. So I will choose RetroArch. And the reason why it's not doing that is because it's not in the associated platform into the RetroArch settings, into Launchbox, okay? You have two options there. You can click on next and choose the associated platform later. Or you can go into the library of Launchbox, go into emulators, RetroArch. You can launch RetroArch, okay? And there you go into load core. You have all the cores that are available into RetroArch, and you go to Atari 5200. Okay, so I will take the first one. It's A5200. So you have to keep in mind or write onto your notebook the number that is between the parentheses. So you can close this one. You go back to your import here, and you choose A5200 libretro. Next, and it will associate automatically the platform with the good core in RetroArch when it will launch them. Okay, and I will launch the first game I found. It will be like Pac-Man. Alright, so I push L3 and R3. I go into the options to see what we have here. And so we have different options. Generally, you don't touch this kind of options. You can use the official one that is into your RetroArch system directory, or you can use the internal one. Up to you to do the test. You can do some audio filters, like soften the harsh sound produced by the Atari. On my side, I'm not doing that, but you can do it as the previous one. And you have different options. I don't think it's a good idea to touch anything there. Oh, maybe this one here, it's interesting. Apply gamepad input hacks required for specific games. Okay, maybe this one is interesting because you will need need to use it for some games, so I would say it's interesting to activate it. And I will go into the shaders, load the XBR MLV4 so as previously, and I will say for the core preset, and now we have a slick backend that I can play with a lot of pleasure. Okay, nice. It's interesting, it's working well. Okay, I will escape this one. I will import my next ROM file set, and now I will choose the GameCube, select the folder, detect it automatically, and now it's here. I will finish this one, and here we go. We have now Nintendo GameCube here. I will launch a game, Disney Sports Skateboarding. Alright, I will go into the option L3 and R3 again. Options, so you have a bunch of options there, because we are using, as you can see, the Dolphin Emu that is used for GameCube and Wii emulation. So my advice here is to change this to what is the most suitable and what is working on your computer. So I won't change anything because I am recording right now my screen and it will crash right away if I am doing that. So I will let you put like, I don't know, 4K. The one that is the most closer to 4K in a 4:3 ratio is this one, I think, but you can go up to this one. After that, we have different options, and that can be changed. If you want to change the anisotropy, it's interesting to have a CX, will improve some different pictures, 2D textures. You can force the texture filtering. I will say that it's up to you also to check on the internet what are the different options, because we don't have any description there. And we have also a lot of options common to the Wii. So it's basically, I think that the different options that can be changed and that are the most suitable. It's up to you if you want the widescreen also. I don't want personally, because I want to play the original game. I mean, as much as close as possible to the original game. I will apply some shader here, and again, I will apply this one because I like this one. So I will save for the core preset again, and it's really beautiful now. Good. So I ask twice, I will import another one, and now I will go with the Dreamcast console, Sega Dreamcast Retroarch, and here we go. Okay, I will launch a game, for instance this one, and it's working pretty well. I will go into the menu, again, I will go into the options. So we have different bunch of options there, the system. I recommend to not touch anything, excepting if you want for this one to boot into the Dreamcast BIOS menu directly, if you want to do that. But I won't touch anything there. The video is interesting because you can change the internal resolution, as you can see it's very low. My advice here is to put something like, if you have a 4K screen, maybe this one would be interesting. Again, if I change the resolution with my recording software, it will crash right away. This one you can change the TV cable type, okay, so I won't touch anything. The NTSC is good for me. You have the screen orientation, you can put vertical, I don't know, yeah, why not? It's something that you can do. You have the enable RTT render to texture buffer if you want another buffer for the textures. And for the other one, oh, you have an integrated XBRZ shader, so you don't have to apply another shader on top of that. So you just have to put 6S and it will be applied directly by the emulator when it does the rendering. You can auto skip frame, like you want a high resolution, your hardware is not able to handle that correctly, and you end up with something very slow, so you can ask to skip frame. My advice here is to be able to use your hardware correctly without having to skip frame. So to basically reduce the resolution, it will be better than skipping frames, because it's more workaround that you are using because you're not setting correctly at the basis your video resolution. Emulation hack, if you want to like have the widescreen, it requires a restart, so I won't do that. The input, you can choose whatever you want. You have also the possibility to put the gun crosshair display, and the different display of the VMU, I would say, for the save files. And you have the visual memory unit. I don't know exactly what it means here, but I will let you play with the different game options that you have here. I will go out of this one. I will import another one. So I will import the Game Gear this time, RetroArch. Alright, and here we go, it's importing, saving games, and now we have the Sega Game Gear here. I will launch a game, just to show you the different options that you have. Double Dragon, for instance. I will press L3 or 3 again to go into the options. I will go into the system, and as you can see, we have some options to change the region, but it's automatic, so it will change automatically depending on the game you are launching. The system boot ROM, so if you want to use the the official one or not. The CD system RAM, when running specified over a single save file between all games from a specific or create a separate. So it's per BIOS, so it will be generic to all the games for this one. So this one is more for the CD, the Sega CD for the Genesis games, because it's a core. The Genesis plus JX is a core that is managing different platforms like Sega CD, Game Gear, as you can see, and Genesis. So on the video side, you can change the aspect ratio if you want something different, the borders for the Game Gear screen. So if you want to reduce the ghosting filter, the ghosting finally on the different image, if you want to frame skip the input, the audio, you have a bunch of options, CPU speed, etc. So I won't touch anything because I'm pretty sure the game will run correctly. The only thing that I would change, because as you can see we have very big pixels there, is the one I am always changing or loading, is the famous shader. So I go here, XBR. So this one I'm pretty sure would be really awesome. Yeah, it's better. It's really better now. Alright, so I think we're good. Very good. So ask twice. And I will import another one, which is the Genesis RomSet, Genesis Retroarch. Alright, it's the same process every time. Alright, it's imported now. I will run a game. I will take, I don't know, the Fantasy Star 2, for instance. Alright, so it's not so bad. I'm pretty impressed right now. I didn't know this game, so it's a Japan game apparently. But we'll go into the options to see what we have here. And we are on the Genesis Plus JX already. So it's a core that we already saw before. So I won't go deeper in this one. So I just wanted to show you that you can have different platforms running with the same core. Okay, so as you can see, it was very great because we have already also the options that we changed before, but also we have a shader applied. If I'm going here, we can see that we have 4 passes of a shader that is XBR MLV4 pass 1. So it's already done. The configuration is already there. Okay. So I will continue to import some different platforms to show you what are the best options, in my opinion. But after that, you have to play with each settings that you can find into the different core options into RetroArch, and also with the different shaders to check what is the most suitable for your display and your game experience. Now I will show you some different type of RomSet. Until now, we just imported some RomSet that were very easy to import, like one ROM corresponding to one file, okay? And it's generally the structure that you will find everywhere on every kind of ROMs. But now I want to show you some different ROM structure that are different from the ones that we saw until now. It's the case, for instance, for the Sega CD. If you go into the Sega CD, you will find some structures very different. Like here we have a CUE, that is the file that should be imported into Launchbox, but also besides to the CUE, you will find also some bin files. And in other structures, you can find some ISO files or some other type of files. But what you have to understand here is that some RomSet could be divided in several files. The issue, I will show you something interesting. The issue here is that if I want to import the Sega CD ROMs, I will select the folder as usual, I will click next, so it's working well, it's importing, blah blah blah, blah blah blah. But here, as you can see, we end up with several files. So it's trying to create an entry for all the files here. And it's really annoying because the one that you want him to launch by default is this file here, but not being able to or create an entry for each of them here, because it's not the entry point. The entry point is the CUE, okay? So you have the option to go here and to delete basically all the bin files manually. And it's not what I recommend because I have a simple way to do it, okay? I will show you a program that I developed for this specific purpose that will process your files in a way that you can temporarily move all the files that are not needed for the import of Launchbox. In a second step, import your ROMs because only the CUE will remain. And then after, ask the program to recover all the files that moved temporarily to the original directories. So you will import correctly your CUE files. To do so, I will use this program here, Launchbox, so LB is for Launchbox, ROM prepare for import. I will launch it, and then, as you can see here, I have a text saying, hello and welcome. Launchbox prepare for import is a program that modifies temporarily your ROM folders so they can be correctly imported into Launchbox. Next step is to select a ROM folder, press enter, when ready. So I press enter. I will go into my Sega CD folder. It doesn't matter if you have subfolder or not, or if everything is like in the same folder. The program is smart enough to detect that and to properly change the structure. So here he's saying that he analyzed the directory and is asking you to select the extension you want to keep temporary. So all other files will be isolated. It gives you also some statistics like this number of files, 28 total directories, extension bin, you have a total of this number of files, higher number of files per directory is 50. So we have a lot of bin, and it's saying that for the CUE you have a total number of 29, etc. So he detected that the files, the CUE files has been detected, so recommendation is to select only CUE files option. So I will put 2 because I want to keep the CUE files, and is asking if you want to keep another extension because in some circumstances you have other extensions that you want to keep because you can have several files needed to run a ROM. So I will push enter because I don't want to select another one. So the guy moved the files temporarily elsewhere. So he's asking you to don't close this window, go in Launchbox and port your ROM. So it's exactly what we are gonna do. I will import the ROM files, add the folder, next. All right, and as you can see, now we have only one entry, okay? We have only one CU file entry created per game. And it is exactly what we want, to not have all these bin files imported at the same time. So it's exactly what we wanted, so we click on finish, and well, it's importing correctly the different games. Alright, so normally we will see saving games here, and as soon as we see saving games done, it shouldn't be long, I hope. Let's refreshing, importing the games. Okay, the games has been imported. Saving games, and as soon as you have the little message here, it's good. So 28 games were imported, so you can come back here and you push enter, and it's done. The different files, the different bin files have been copied back. Alright, so if I'm coming back on Sega CD now and I want to test the game, I don't know, I will go with Dracula Unleashed, for instance. So I will run the game. Alright, I push start. And for this one, the advices concerning the picture itself or the rendering, going into the options and going into shaders, it will be very fast because as you can see, we are using, again, the Genesis Plus JX here. So it's exactly what we already did before. So the system, video, everything you did before and the shaders included is already applied to the core. So we don't have anything to do, just leave that. So I will do the same with the Sega Saturn, but we are in the exactly the same situation with bin, CUE, and multiple files and things like that, as you can see. We have an ISO here, we have WAV files, so it's a big mess. I will get some help from my program here, so LB ROM prepare for import. Again, I will use my friend to select Sega Saturn folder. And then here I have more extensions, but it doesn't matter, I want to keep the CUE. So I will keep the CUE and enter because I don't have another extension. It moved all the files, so now I can confidently import my directory. And here we go. As you can see, it's clean. We have only CUE files. It's exactly what we wanted. And then here we go. We have the Sega Saturn, and we can launch a game like Duke Nukem 3D. Alright, and it's pretty ugly. We will see if we can do something to improve that. Okay, the drive is empty. Oh, yes, the drive is empty. You know why? Because we didn't ask the program here to put the files back. I will click enter and now it will work. It's really important that you don't forget to push enter at the end to get your files back. Alright, it's really better. So I will go into the options. We will see what we have here for the Yabos. Okay, so the Yabos core, it's a new one that we never seen before. We have the Frameskip, we have the Shelly BIOS, so the high-level emulation. Add-on cartridge, so it's simulating an add-on RAM expansion cartridge that can be used per game. So I don't see a lot of things here, personally. I don't see anything giving you the possibility to improve the resolution? Okay. Before doing that, in this specific situation, I will go into Launchbox. I will go into Emulators, RetroArch, and I will launch RetroArch because I am very curious to see what other cores we have. So every time you have a core that is not giving you a lot of options, or you don't like the way it's rendering your games, you can go into this section here, load core, and you can see, so I will go to the end directly, Sega Saturn, and you can see the different cores that you can use, okay? So you have Yabo's, Yaba Senshiro, or Beatles Saturn, okay? I will try the Yaba Senshiro, but you don't have to do anything in RetroArch. It's pretty much into the manage emulators. You go into RetroArch and you go into the associated platforms. You go to the entry concerning the Sega Saturn, and you change this one for the Yaba Senshiro, because we want to test this one to see if we have better options when we launch a game. You launch Duke Nukem 3D again, so at least the game is starting, hopefully. Alright, I will go into the options, and into the options, we will see if we have more options to be able to change. So what is interesting here is that we have the possibility to go up to 4K resolution, and I will say for the HB resolution mode, fit to emulation, so it will stick to the 4K resolution here, okay? So it's, I would say it's really better. We have to restart to make this happen. I don't know if it will work on my side. Alright, we have a 4K emulation right here. It's still ugly because 2D textures won't be impacted by the 4K resolution upscaling, but at least we have something. Alright. So as you can see, it's really ugly. It's still ugly because, as I said, the 2D textures are not impacted the good way by the 4K. Only the 3D objects are upscaled to up to 4K. So for the 2D, you go into shaders, you load again a shader of your choice. And I don't know if it will help a lot. Not really. It's still ugly. So in that case, it's not working well. So you just have to remove the shader. You have to put 0 here. So it's not doing anything anymore. So it's the maximum that we can have with the Saturn, I guess. But you have to test all the cores available, and I will let you do that. I will import another system that could be difficult to import due to the fact that we have multiple files, and I will ask for help from my program here. So again, you click on enter, you push enter. It will be the Panasonic 3DO. And here we have a lot of different files, but I will keep only the CUE file. Enter, I will import my platform again, and it's magical. I have only CUE file. Yeah, super cool. And it's done. I have the Panasonic 3DO here. So I will go into my program, I will push enter, so the files are coming back. Even if the download phase hasn't been finished, what is important is that you wait for the platform to appear in the list here. It means that the different entries for different games have been created. And I will launch, I don't know, Out of This World, for instance. Alright, okay, so we have something and it's starting right away. It's interesting. Okay, so as you can see, it's working pretty well. Ooh, okay. But as you can see, it's okay. I will go into the options, as usual. I will go into the options and we'll check what we can do there. One little advice here is not to use Gold Star, Senyo, or 3DO Arcade BIOS, because I've always had trouble running all the games with those BIOS. My recommendation is to stick to the one that is selected here, the FZ1, and it will work correctly for everything. For the CPU overclock, I will recommend you to go not above the 1.5. 2, you will have a lot of trouble with some games. 1.5 is great for all the games normally. Here it's, I will say something that you can change, but I won't change this option because it will give you maybe some pixels, but at the same time it will reduce the hertz, so I want to stick to 60 hertz on my side. This one I won't change anything. I will just toggle on the high-res cell rendering. Okay, it's not really better, honestly, but in some games, like Need for Speed, for instance, it will help increasing the resolutions. And this one is for different games. I will let them off for now, and as soon as you have an issue with those games listed here, I will turn and toggle on for the specific games. We will try for the shaders. Sometimes it's working, sometimes it's not working. I don't know for this one what will be the result. I think we have something a little bit better. It's a little bit rounded, but depends on what you want for your system. But yeah, I don't think we will have something better, you know. At the same time, we are talking about consoles very old with 12.5 megahertz of CPU, you know, as you can see. I'm pretty sure I haven't dreamed that, so yeah. The original one is 12.5 megahertz of CPU. It's crazy knowing that you can reach 5 gigahertz today. So, I mean, we shouldn't ask for them too much. It's already really beautiful for 12.5 megahertz, so let's try to be humble. Okay, alright, and I will now import Nintendo 64. As you can see, we have something very simple. So one file, one game. so it should be straightforward. I will show you in a moment. Alright, so Nintendo 4. Alright, so it has been imported, it's already available here, and let's say I want to play Kirby. Kirby is here. So it's pretty ugly, I totally agree with you. And if we go into the options, what we can improve there. So first we have the Muppet 64 Plus, or here we have actually, so do we have something concerning the resolution? Fortunately, I don't think, okay. So in Glide N64, okay, because it's using the Glide N64, if we are using the parallel RDP, we have other options, okay. But let's say we want to stick to the default option, Glide N64, and you have the resolution that you can change here, okay. So let's say I want to, I won't change it anyway, as you already know, because my recording software will crash, but you have this the 4:3 aspect ratio resolution that you can change, or the wide resolution. And after that, you can say that you want something wide, okay, or something stretched. But on my side, it's not working. I guess you have to change this here, okay. Okay, maybe we have to restart, in fact, okay? In some circumstances, you have to restart. So, wide, stretched, and I will restart the game just to see if the option... Okay, so we have to restart, I confirm. It's pretty ugly, anyway. So I will say that I don't want stretched, but I want wide, and for the wide resolution, I will try to go at this resolution here. We have to restart the game, so I will restart it again. Okay, it's a little bit better. Yeah, it's better. Keep in mind that when you upscale, no matter the emulator, it will upscale the 3D object, okay? So that's why into the game it will be like awesome, because you have a lot of 3D objects. But as you can see, everything to these 2D textures that you can see at the bottom, for instance, right now, it will remain totally disgusting and ugly. It's something that the emulator can do anything, and generally when you go into shaders, load a specific shader, it won't change anything, okay? It won't change anything, as you can see. It won't improve anything on the picture, because it's not a pure 2D texture. So it's something that you can do, like improving the resolution on specific site for the 3D object, and at the same time improving the textures, the 2D textures. So now I will directly jump onto the import of another system, other ROMs, and we will see the specific case of the Nintendo Wii. I will go into the directory here, and I will import the games from there. Nintendo Wii automatically detected, as usual, RetroArch, use the file in their location, blah blah blah. And here we go for the games I will import here. It's starting the import, as usual, you know the procedure now, and it's refreshing the Launchbox games database, the local one. It's saving the games as usual, and it will create a new entry there. Here we go, it's saving games, and we are done. So we have an entry here. Okay, now my recommendation to play Nintendo Wii games. It's really simple. Just go onto your favorite Amazon website and buy a MAFlash USB device. You plug it onto your computer and it will be recognized automatically. You then can pair real Wiimotes, and then you have to configure a little bit the core, Dolphin core, into RetroArch. So I will launch a game. I don't know, like the $1 million pyramid, for instance. Let's go for it. Okay, now I will go into the main menu. I don't have my controller, so I don't press L3 and R3 at the same time. It's useless. So I can go into the menu by pressing F1, and I can go into the different options there. The option I want you to go firstly first. It's not options, it's not shaders. We will see that after, because I totally agree on the fact that the picture you saw just before is just ugly, disgusting, and whatever you want. But I want you to go into the controls, and I want you to go into port 1 and to change the device type for real Wiimote, okay? So let's say you have a controller with the ability to use the gyroscope, like an Xbox One series controller, okay? It's one I have right now, but honestly, playing with the gyroscope for the Wiimote, as a Wiimote, you can do that by choosing this option here, but I think it's not the best way to play Wii games, okay? You can do it if you don't have anything else, if you don't want to pay for an external USB device like the MAFlash one, but honestly I don't recommend that, because it will dramatically reduce your personal user or player experience, so I totally discourage you to do that. So let's say you have your MAFlash device connected right now, you go there and you change for real Wiimote. You press not ESC, you press backslash. Port 2, you do the same. Backslash. Port 3, you do the same, and you understand what I am doing, right? I'm pretty sure you understand already what you have to do for the 4 entries there, and the port 5 is reserved for GameCube or something like that. So it will be emulated because Dolphin, as you already know, and as you can see at the bottom left, Dolphin is used as the emulator for the Wii and GameCube at the same time. So it's using the port 5 for a device to play GameCube games. So just before leaving this menu, you have to go into Manage Remap Files and you save. If you want to just to play one game, for instance, you can save for the game. But my recommendation, it's exactly the same as the shaders. You save for the core remap file. So doing that, every time RetroArch will load this core, Dolphin, it will load this file that is remapping all the different inputs. And so it will map for a real remote, and you will see that it will automatically bind your remotes every time you're launching RetroArch with the core. So it's the best configuration for the inputs. For the options, I mean, it's exactly what we said. So if I am putting like a 4K, it's in between, you know, because it's a 4:3 ratio. So it's really in between. I will choose this one, but I will have to leave and launch again. And you will see that the graphics are really, or should be, a little bit better. So F1 again. I will come back here into the options, render, okay. You have the possibility to set the widescreen hack if you want. So F1, why? No. Personally, I don't like that, but it's up to you. It depends on the preferences you have. And for the rest, I will maybe turn this one on. I don't know. But yeah, I don't think there is. So you have some options for the IR, for the remote. You can deactivate the Ramble. Okay, this one you have to activate this one. It's really important. Why? Because every time you launch the game with the core into RetroArch, the core will continuously scan your remotes to see if you're adding new one or if you're removing one of them, okay? So it's very important because every time you want to join a game, like someone is playing a game and you want to join and play with your game partner, you won't be able to do that if you're not activating that. So it's an advice I give you. Also, we can go into shaders just to see if we have something better. I think we don't have anything better because it's already applied, okay? Because we did it already for the GameCube, right? We did activate this shader here, the XBR MLV 4 pass 1 4 times, so with 4 shader passes, so it's already done. Normally we should have the best graphical or graphics possible here, but as you can see, we have to wait a little bit because I don't have real remotes connected right now, and we will see what's happening. Alright, it's working. So I will push ESC twice and I will come back here. Okay, now before importing the MAME RomSet and show you how to do it, I want to talk about arcade games. Yes, you got it. We will set up MAME emulator to play all of those games running on those big arcade machines that you filled all day long during your childhood with coins to continue playing games and have a small chance to finish them. Something that never happened, right? MAME can be either downloaded as a standalone program or used from within RetroArch. It's exactly what we are gonna do in this tutorial. When it comes to getting games working, it can be a bit tricky and very confusing. MAME ROMs don't work the same way as other emulators. To get a game to work, you need a few different ROM files, and it's not always obvious which ones you need. I will explain that part. Although arcade cabinets were often specialized to a specific game, they were of course reused for other games. Many of the circuits boards were built in a modular fashion, so that parts could be swapped in and out to customize the system. This does mean though that there were a lot of common parts between different games. When arcade machine emulation started back in the 90s, computer storage was expensive. Reducing the amount of data you had to store was particularly important. As explained before, a lot of the files needed to run a set of games are duplicated across the different ROM sets. This is why the concept of a split ROM was developed to stop this unnecessary duplication. Arcade games can be grouped together based on the original arcade cabinet they were developed for. The game that ran on the original cabinet can be thought as the parent of all the games that were developed using the same cabinet. These child games are termed clones in the MAME system. A parent ROM set contains all the files that are common to both the parent and all the clones of that arcade cabinet. It also contains the parent game files, which allow that game to run from just the single single parent ROM set. Clone ROM set only contains the specific files needed for that clone, along with the actual game software itself. A clone ROM set can't run without the parent ROM set. This system using parent and clone ROM sets is called a split ROM set. Common files have been split out to parent sets. In that case, a parent set will contain all of the ROM files required to run a master version of the game, and all the other games based upon that game will be split. A split set will only contain the ROM files that are different to the parent set. Concretely, to play Pac-Man, you will need the Pac-Man set, the parent, and the Pac-Man set, the clone. Most of the files required to run a game are contained in the parent and clone ROM sets, but most systems also require BIOS and device ROM sets to completely emulate any particular arcade cabinet. Different parent games may use different arcade cabinets, but again, the components are common across a number of systems. These common component files were again split out of the full ROM set files into the separate files for the BIOS and device ROM sets. If you've managed to follow along this far, you will now understand that any single arcade game requires a parent ROM set and a clone ROM set, and that games can be grouped together by their parent. The MAME emulator finds files by first looking in the ROM set that you ask it to emulate, and if it can't find some of the files, it then checks to see if there is a parent ROM set. The thinking behind a merged ROM set is that if MAME expects to find the files it needs in the ROM set that you ask it to run, then why not put all the files for all the games in a particular group into one single ROM set. This ROM set will include the parent ROM set files and every single clone ROM set files. When you then ask MAME to run a game, it will have every file needed in this single multi-game ROM set. So a merged ROM set file lets you run a parent game and every single one of its clones. I will do a sum up so you understand the differences here better. A non-merged set is one that contains absolutely everything necessary for a given game to run in one zip file. This is very space inefficient, but it is a good way to go if you want to have very few sets and want everything self-contained and easy to work with. Personally, I don't recommend this for most users. A split set is one where the parent set contains all of the normal data it should, and the clone sets contain only what has changed as compared to the parent set. This saves some space, but isn't efficient because it relies on other ROM sets to make your games running, and it could be hell trying to figure out what parts you need to make everything run smoothly. A merged set takes the parent set and one or more clone sets and puts them all inside the parent set's storage. A complete merged set with the parent and all clones uses less disk space than a split set. I will give advice on how to decide what ROM set you should get. If disk space is an issue, you can save several gigabytes using a merged set instead of a split set, but your front-end may not be able to tell that you have a game available if it is a clone. If you want to be able to delete the ROMs you don't want without breaking others, you need a non-merged set, but it will take up a huge amount of space until you are done deleting. If you want something in between the two previous options, a split set is for you, but deleting a parent set, a BIOS set, or a device will kill all of the other ROM sets dependent upon it. So, your games won't run until you've also downloaded any other ROM sets that they depend on. This can sometimes be an awkward process, and you can spend a lot of time trying to group together the files you need to get the game working. Just to add one more layer of complication, MAME also makes use of CHD files. Newer arcade machines didn't have all the software built into ROM chips on the circuit board. Like modern consoles, they had hard disks, DVD drivers, CD drives, and laser discs. The data stored on these types of media tends to be large, so MAME uses a different file format to compress and store this data. These files are compressed hunks of data files, CHD. So on top of the various ROM set files, you may also need a few CHD files to get a game to work. My advice for the easiest way to get your arcade games up and running is to download a full reference merged set. This contains all of the RomSet files for all of the arcade games that MAME supports, including BIOS as well. It will be a big download, upwards of 80 gigabytes for just the RomSet files without any CHD files, but you will get everything you need to start playing your games in one go. One thing you can also do if you want to invest some time in learning a ROM manager like CLR MAME Pro, you can then change between the different types, rebuild your sets, add new ROMs, and audit your ROM sets so you can see what is broken and where. You can find some tutorials on the internet if you're interested. Another confusing part of the MAME system is versioning. The MAME emulator is continually being updated to improve compatibility and expand the number of games that can be emulated. With each new version of MAME, some of the ROM files get updated. Perhaps a better version of the ROM image is created, errors are fixed for the new version and just simply requires some modifications. Whatever the reason, it means that not all RomSet files will work with all MAME versions. Usually a reference set is created each time a new version of MAME is released. My best advice is to always use the reference set that matches the version of MAME you're using. You can mix versions, but you will find some games won't work. So now, let's practice. We're going to go into ROM files, and it's exactly the same. You can import the ROM set full with that technique here. You can go here on MAME, and I will import from this directory here, exactly the same as the previous one. Into Launchbox, it won't be called MAME, it will be called Arcade. It's totally fine, it's exactly the platform we want here. I will use the Retroarch, but I don't have any entry there. I will show you how to do it. So I will click on Next, using their location, and here it's a big difference, and you have to check this one. You have to force using MAME metadata, because you are importing MAME files and you want to use this option here. So Launchbox will be able to use a different technique or mechanism to get information concerning your arcade games. Okay, we can see that we are importing these games here. It's totally normal because I have a subset of the MAME set, but if you import the full MAME set, you will have a lot of games here. So finish here, I have my Sega Game Gear here, so it's importing my games. I will go in the meanwhile into manage emulators. I will go into RetroArch. I will come here. As you can see, I have the entry here arcade. I have to click on it, and I will go onto MAME libretro. Okay, I will click on OK. Normally it will work, I will say right away. I will go into arcade. I have different sections created automatically. I will launch I don't know, maybe Tekken. We'll try. Okay, so the first time you're launching that, okay, I'm pretty sure you saw the message, or I will show you on the screen. The first time you launch MAME, you will have this error because all the ROMs are coming, and I spent a lot of time finding a solution for that. So listen carefully, it's a hint I will give you, and you will save a lot of time and several hours. So the first time you're launching from Launchbox, again with MAME, you have to go in Tools, Manage, Emulators, on RetroArch, and you have to uncheck this one, okay? So basically you don't want the ROM archives, so basically zip files, to be extracted before running. So the zip file will be directly given to MAME, and MAME will just digest it the right way. So I will run Tekken again. Okay, and this one is a very specific issue I have right now. So it's saying that I don't have the required files. So basically what it means is that I don't have the CHD file corresponding to the game into the ROM set, the original ROM set. So I won't show you Tekken running here, but I will take another one. I'm pretty sure this one will run without any CHD file. Alright, it's working, as you can see. So basically to play this kind of game, I will just wait for my controller to come back. You have to push select, and select is putting credit into what was basically what was the arcade cabinet. Like physically you were putting some coins, and here you have to press select and it will add coins for you, so you have some credits, and after that you can play the game. Okay, so it's the same behavior for every MAME games. Okay, so don't forget to uncheck the extract archive before running, because it will just give you troubles running your games. And don't forget to get the original ROM set and also the CHD file. It's generally a totally different archive that you have to get. Okay, now we want to import MS-DOS games because we want to play very old games, and we like it. We are eager for that. So we go into my ROMs, MS-DOS, select folder, MS-DOS. I will use RetroArch again. everything is going through RetroArch. For this one, I know already the thing I have to use. So you have the DOSBox, okay? It depends on what you want to do. DOSBox won't be usable with the controller on even on RetroArch. You won't have any controller support. And maybe for some games you want controller support. Just to say also that you can easily switch on RetroArch using the game focus on. If you use the game focus on, you can access the keyboard as it was totally pass through. So it will totally pass through the keyboard keys and you won't have the different shortcut from a RetroArch. So I will go and select DOSBox Pure. DOSBox Pure is a fork of DOSBox, and DOSBox Pure is giving you the ability to use the controller directly into RetroArch. So I will use the same thing as usual. It's importing the games, so I'm very excited because I will be able to play MS-DOS games. Computers! Yay! Alright. So I have a bunch of stuff here. Well, I don't know, I will try Street Fighter. Okay. So remember that we are emulating here. We are emulating a game that was running onto computer on DOS, okay? Okay, so and right now I am using my Xbox One controller, just to mention, okay? So it's pretty amazing. If you go into the menu of RetroArch, especially for this emulator core, you go onto controls. You go into port 1 controls, and you can see that it detected automatically a key mapping, which is for Street Fighter. So DOSBox Pure loaded a specific key mapping for this game and is maintaining a game database, a game key mapping database somewhere that is automatically loaded depending on the game. So when it detects that it's Street Fighter, it's checking into his database and loading the key mapping corresponding. So it's just, it's just awesome. By the way, if you want to use your, I would say the virtual keyboard, you just have to press L3, so just under the left analog stick, and you can navigate and write whatever you want. For some games it could be interesting if you're stuck, but on our side, it's working pretty well. Ready for round 1. Wow, like that. Okay, nice. Okay, so I will just get out of here because I'm not good at all. Okay, I will stay a little bit more on MS-DOS games because I want you to understand a very specific feature from RetroArch, which is the game focus. Game focus, basically, when you launch RetroArch, the game focus is off, meaning that every keys you push on your keyboard will be shortcuts from RetroArch, okay? So if I launch a game and I press P, for instance, so with MS-DOS games, I will end up pushing the pause button, okay? Because RetroArch will interpret the shortcut P as pause, okay? So everything will be shortcuts from RetroArch. If I am pushing the scroll lock button into RetroArch, it will change the game focus from off, it will toggle the game focus from off to on. And then everything keys pressed from your keyboard will directly pass through RetroArch, and it will be like you're using your keyboard with the emulator and at the end with the game directly. So I will take an example here, and at the same time I will show you how to configure your sound card with all games, okay? Let's say I will take Transport Tycoon, it would be a very great example. I will launch the game, okay? So I am here on the DOSBox Pure, and the guy is wondering what it has to launch, basically. So you have to explain, or you have to select an option there. So I will go into the menu, F1, I will go into audio options, and here you have the Sound Blaster, because when it was MS-DOS time, we were using dedicated card, like video card that we are using today, like GeForce and AMD cards. We were using a dedicated card on PCI slots that were in charge of giving you sound. It wasn't integrated into all motherboards as it is today. It wasn't the case also for the graphic cards, but we still use graphic cards today because the integrated ones are very bad, and the price to have a very great graphic card integrated into motherboard, embedded into motherboard, is very high today. But it's not the case for the sound card. The integrated ones are very cheap today and are doing a very great job. But here we were forced to use dedicated card at this time, and we were forced also to set up with some parameters like port IRQ the DMA and the quality, like 8, 16, 32 bits. So we had to configure this kind of thing. So you go there, you don't have to change anything because honestly you won't see any difference, but you get the information that you have here, okay? So in our case, I will write somewhere that it's 220, 7, DMA1 and 16-bit DMA5. Okay, now I'm pushing F1, so for this one you have to check a little bit, but in this specific case, it's not the case for all the games. Sometimes you will have a config.com, config.exe, it depends the game. But this one is installed, you go under configuration, already right now you push the button scroll lock and you can see that the game focus is on now, okay? And now if I am using the arrow keys, it's working well. You know, it wasn't the case when the game focus was off because it was using shortcuts for RetroArch directly. But I forgot to say something here. I will push scroll lock again, so the game focus is off. I will push F1. And you have to check what kind of Sound Blaster you set up there, okay? It's a Sound Blaster 16, so I will use this one, okay? So F1, scroll lock again because I want to have the game focus on, and it's a Sound Blaster 16, so enter, it was 220, the IRQ was 7, if I remember well, the DMA was 1, and the sound channel was 5, okay? So we have configured, as you can see on the right, everything there. So if I'm coming back, so scroll lock F1, and I am coming back here, okay, you can see here with the transparency, the transparent background, you can see the information we set up there. So it was a 220, the IRQ was 7, so it's 7 also, the 8-bit DMA was 1, and we had a channel of 5 here, okay? It's not displayed here, but it was 5. So F1 again, scroll lock again because I want to game focus on, I will push enter, so the configuration is done, I will go and exit program. So everything was saved, main menu. I have to click again, to push again a button, and then I will launch Tycoon. As you can see, we have the sound coming, but it's really bad sound, right? I mean, it's not what I was expecting. But as you can see, the mouse is working and I can select different options. Okay, so for the sound, generally, as you can see, the sound is really, I would say, it's not smooth, it's kind of slow. So to fix that, I will push scroll lock, F1, and I will go this time into emulation options, and I will force the 60 FPS output, okay? And you will see it will be really better. Yeah! Now the sound is really better. So basically what it means is that the game was running at maybe 30 FPS because it was the default value there, and forcing it to run at 60 FPS, so at the same rate as your screen, because my screen is 60 FPS, my output is 60 FPS on my computer. Forcing this option made the game run at the correct pace, so everything is working well. So now I push ESC twice, and here we go, and that's it. Now I will import some PlayStation ROMs directly here, so the system PS6 here. We select the folder, next, Sony PlayStation, RetroArch, use the files in their location, next. So I will import all that games here. Here we go. Okay, now I have the entry Sony PlayStation here. I can launch any games. I would say, I don't know, like Tekken, for instance. So this one is not working, as you can see. Okay, I have to check when you have something happening like that, like nothing is showing up. You can try to use another game, okay, because it could be related to the specific ROM you're trying to launch. So if you are in the situation where the second game is not showing up, you won't have to launch all the games to test. Basically, there is something weird onto the core of the emulator itself. So you will go into Manage, Emulators, RetroArch, you go into Associated Platforms, and we can see that for the Sony PlayStation here, we have the DuckStation libretro. Personally, on my side, it never worked. I mean, at least for the PBP files that we have here, okay? So my advice is to use Mednafen. Where is Mednafen? Mednafen PS6 or PS6 hardware. If you can, I will go for PS6 hardware because it will give you the capacity to upscale some 3D objects as we saw for other emulators before. So now, if I launch a game like Street Fighter, here it will work. Okay, I turn on my controller. It's pretty ugly, as you can see, but we will try to do something to improve that. Let's just go into the game. Alright, we are into the game now. L3, R3 as usual, options as usual. Into the video, I will say internal GPU resolution. You can go up to whatever you want. I will go for the maximum because I have the hardware to do so. I have the hardware also to change the internal color depth. The dithering, I will go for internal resolution, so it will stick to the resolution. You force the GPU resolution at the top here, so 16. The texture texture filtering, it depends what you want, but the nearest is like the fastest, so it's not hardware intensive. If you go to the right, it will drain more your hardware, but it will be better, okay? So we are talking about texture filtering. Anyway, you have the text explaining everything here. Basically, the nearest is the fastest. After you have Saber, XVR, Bilinear, 3-point, Jing2. Jing2 is like the most consuming one. I will stick to the nearest. Okay. For the rest, I don't think we should change anything. If you want to change the aspect ratio, like for NTSC or anything, I won't touch anything there. I will come back because I have more options. The on-screen notifications, you can display the internal FPS if you want. The input, you can change different things here, but you can have like an input mode for the gun. It's interesting. I never tried this one, so I'll let you check what you can do for that. You can manage your memory card. The PGXP, precision geometry, transforming, whatever. So it's more hack, I would say. But it will help you to optimize everything in game or the displaying. And here you have the real emulation hacks. You can have the widescreen. Honestly, I tried it and I had a lot of graphic glitches into games, especially Resident Evil with this one, so I don't recommend that. And you can skip the BIOS if you don't want to display the BIOS introduction every time you start a game. And you can change the CPU frequency scaling, but I'm pretty sure it will kill some of your games, so it's up to you to try to check. And you can change the renderer. I encourage you to not touch this one, so it will choose the best one for the game. And I don't think... Oh, the one that is very important for you, especially for some games that needs to be loaded into memory from the CD, I recommend you to turn this one from synchronous to asynchronous, because it will help getting different assets loaded at runtime instead of trying to load every time a big bunch of assets like synchronous. It's really interested. The precache will load the whole game at the startup, so it's not, in my opinion, it's not an option, but the asynchronous is really something that will improve the loading time into your games. So change this one for asynchronous. And so now for the shaders, my recommendation is to go with, you have to go into Slang, the Slang one, and to go for something that is lighter, because a lot of your hardware resources will be used already by the PlayStation emulator, and it's huge. So I will go for an HQ4X. It will be better to run your game. So save core preset, and it crashed. You already know why, right? Because I am recording my screen. Okay, my recommendation anyway is to use Mednafen hardware and to put all the settings I put, and you won't have any issue because, as I said, I am using a specific recording software, and it will definitely, I'm pretty sure it will work on your system. So now let's say you want to remove a game from your ROM library for a specific platform. We will test with, let's say, Atari 2600, okay? I want to remove a game. I will go into my ROM folder and go into the corresponding platform. I will remove the Decathlon one because I don't like the picture here, let's say, so I will just remove this game. So it's not there anymore, okay? So here, the simple way to do a check on the Launchbox, because Launchbox won't have detected that you removed the game. So you go into scan and you scan for removed Atari. So you can do it for all ROMs at once, but for this one we will go just for the current platform. So I'll click on that, and as you can see, oh, this game has been removed, so yes, I will remove this game. And it's removing the game. Now you want the game to come back, okay? We will go into the folder. I will put back the game, so the game is here now, okay? The logical thing to do would be to go into scan for added Atari for added the ROMs into the current platform, and click on this one. So next, and it detected automatically the ROM that you added, so it's working pretty well. So finish saving games, and your game will appear again into your library, and it will download all the medias, movie, posters, and things like that. So you don't have anything to do. So it's working pretty well because Launchbox is remembering the directory or the folder where you imported this platform, and it will look into this folder and directory to check for new ROMs added compared to his local library. Okay, now that you are very happy with your emulation station, I will show you how to fix some display issues that you can have with different core emulators. I will take, for instance, the Atari 2600, okay? I will launch a game, doesn't matter, this game for instance. Okay, as you can see here, we can say that the display is not completely full screen, right? And it's a little bit annoying. It's exactly what is coming from the emulator, and we will see how to tweak that. So I am pushing F1 or L3 or R3, and I am going into the options. The first thing that you have to check first when you want to ensure that the display is totally full screen, is taking all the screen, is to go into options and to check if you don't have specific options to do that. It is the first step. So we are going into options, and as we can see here, we have aspect percentage for NTSC and PAL. Okay, so if I'm going there, I will try to get the maximum value, 125. It's an option that is coming from the emulator, and I am turning this option up to 125 for both because I don't have any clue if I am using NTSC or PAL right now with the Stella emulator. Okay, in my case, as you can see, it's going that way. Okay, so it increased the display area. Okay, it's fine, it's working well, I am very happy with that. But let's say you want a different display because you think, for instance, that it's not displayed correctly. Okay, you will go, and you can do this for different emulators, into settings, video, you will go into scaling, and you will activate integer scale. Why integer scale? Because if you're not using this, you will have to go onto aspect ratio, do a custom, and put a specific number of pixels. It will take a lot of time to go to the desired value. Okay, so basically what you have to do is turn on the integer scale. Just to explain you, integer scaling is scaling by a factor of a whole number, such as 2x, for instance, okay, 3x, 4x, etc. Okay, in RetroArch, this option scales the image up to the greatest integer scale below the set resolution. So, for instance, if you set your full screen resolutions to 1920 by 1080p and enable integer scaling, it will only scale a 320 by 240 image up to 2080 by 960 and leave black borders all around. This is to maintain a one-on-one pixel ratio with the original source image, so that pixels are not unevenly duplicated. Non-integer scaling is particularly adverse when the image is scaled by a factor below 0. For example, increasing the resolution by 1.5 will result in heavily warped and uneven pixel distribution. So my advice here is to turn on integer scale and to increase to the desired value. The core provided is here, and if you increase here, you can set whatever you want or is more suitable. Okay, in my case, if I am very happy with what I have here, you have something to do to ensure that the game or the core is started with this configuration. Let's say you go into quick menu, you go onto overrides, and you can say for the core overrides, or you can say for the game overrides. Let's say you want to apply this to only one game, you can choose this option. On my side, I will say for the core overrides, get out of here, and launch this one again. And it's working well right away, and it will do the same because I saved for the core override. It will do the same for every games that I launch for this specific core. Now I will show you how to update all your cores, because it won't be automatic, it will be directly into RetroArch. Launchbox won't do that for you. To do so, you go into the menu, you have to close the content because you shouldn't have any core running right now. So I close the content. You will go into the main menu, you will go onto Online Updater, and you go onto Update Installed Cores, and it will update all the different cores. As you can see at the bottom left, it's updating right now. Okay, now I will show you a very interesting option that you can use. So if you go into the menu, F1 or L3, R3, you go onto settings, you go onto input, you go onto hotkeys, and you can see here into the hotkeys that you have several hotkeys, because we are in the menu hotkeys, right? Saying that you can, for instance, rewind. So I will show you how to rewind. It's very easy because it's already configured. So for some cores, you won't be able to do it, but I choose Genesis because I know already that Genesis is able to do this kind of thing. Okay, so the hotkeys is already configured, but you have to go onto the options and go into quick menu rewind, and you have to turn on the rewind. The rewind frames, the number of frames to rewind per step. Higher value will increase the rewind speed. I will say that I want, I don't know, maybe 60 FPS, so it will be like 1 second each time. I have a buffer, and the buffer I won't touch anything, I think it's enough. I'm going there, and if I push R, I can go back to several seconds before. So let's say, okay, as you can see, okay, 1 second maybe is a little bit high. So I will say maybe 6 frames, I will try. Okay, I will try this one. As you can see, it's already, okay, so finally the 1 frame is really enough. As you can see. So you push R and it will go back, as you can see. And I think it's very interesting, especially if you are losing. But yeah, let's say, as you can see, I am dying. Oh my god, I don't know how to play, blah blah blah. I push R and I'm not dying anymore. So it's very great. Yeah, and I can kill them. Yeah. Alright. Now I will give you some explanations on the most common core options you will be able to configure so you can set up things the proper way. Resolution and internal resolution. You will find this option often into core options. Resolution is the measure in which how many pixels are displayed on the screen. For emulation of 2D system, the resolution can only be upscaled, making the pixels more apparent. Usually, you apply some shaders to improve the final rendering. For emulation of 5th generation consoles, starting back in 1993, and newer, the internal resolution can be increased to make the game look sharper. We're talking about the Sega Saturn, 1994, the Sony PlayStation, 1994, and the Nintendo 64, 1996. This greatly improves the display, but it generally increases the 3D objects, as I said, and not the 2D textures. Another option that you will see is the anti-aliasing. We can distinguish two types of anti-aliasing. Special anti-aliasing method. You will find two kinds of algorithms in course options. The MSAA, multi-sample anti-aliasing, and the SSAA, super sampling anti-aliasing. Globally, MSAA 8X have best edge smoothing, but lowest performance FPS. SSAA 4X have moderate edge smoothing, but better performance and texture sharpness. Theoretically, SSAA is a stronger method because the textures have more detail and sharpness. Special anti-aliasing algorithms are designed specifically for frame buffers and solves one specific problem: aliasing issues on geometry corners, pixelated, jagged, triangle, or line boundaries. MSAA and SSAA textures cannot be in a straightforward way for texturing 3D objects. It's purely used to improve the depth effect when rendering 3D environments onto a 2D display. On the other side, you have the texture filtering, and it's more general thing designed to solve aliasing and blurring issues while mapping 2D image onto 3D geometry. Trilinear and anisotropic filters use MIP maps, cascade of downsampled images. Texture filtering normally produces anti-aliasing results within the texture geometry, but aliasing on geometry corners has different origins and cannot be eliminated by using some better texture filtering algorithm. That's why MSAA and SSAA and texture filtering are applied independently in 3D engines. Another options that we saw already in the different configuration of the different cores before are the shaders. The shaders are very important and you have different categories. The CRT shaders, these replicate aperture grille CRTs, which have sharp images and strong scan lines. If you find that this doesn't look a damn thing like your old TV, it's probably because you own a shadow mask style CRT, which has less noticeable scan lines. The easiest way to tell the difference is to feel the curve of the screen. Aperture grills only curve horizontally, if at all. You've got also the NTSC Shaders, that are filters that replicate the cables used to connect the system to the TV. They vary in quality, with the lowest being RF, then composite, then S-video and RGB, being the highest quality. Many emulators have NTSC filters built into them. The level of blur in RF and composite cables are needed for dithering to blend. S-video and RGB are too clear to blend dithering. Many SNES games were developed with the color distortion from these cables in mind, such as Chrono Trigger, with shifted values that make blacks look brown and borders look purple, which will be output properly with NTSC colors. Smoothing shaders. These shaders, such as Super Ego, HQX, XBR, and XBRZ, attempt to reduce pixelization by smoothing and rounding edges using various methods to upscale the image. Keep in mind that slang shaders work with Vulkan renderer and GLSL shaders with GL renderer. At that point, you've got two entries in the shader screen, so you can apply the right set of shaders depending on your current renderer. Dithering is a technique to increase the amount of color and shading that can be done on a system. The effect is achieved by using lines or dots, which are then blurred by the video encoders that the system uses. The video encoder converts the RGB signal generated by the console's graphics processor to the YUV color space which most televisions use, which can cause artifacts that lead to blurring of adjacent pixels, particularly when the video quality is downgraded to composite. This has often been used as a cheap way to coax more color from a system's graphics processor than it is usually possible. However, since modern PCs don't convert color space at all, the signal is untouched and the dithering is far more obvious. Genesis relies heavily on dithering. The waterfalls in Sonic the Hedgehog are a classic example. A few SNES games use it as well, example Meta Warriors. Certain PS1 games such as Silent Hill make heavy use of dithering. In that game, it is used for shading. Many other PS1 games have a checkerboard. Dithering is frequently used for transparency effects in systems that cannot easily do them, such as the Sega Saturn. The Saturn port of Castlevania Symphony of the Night uses dithering for dialogue boxes, whereas the original PlayStation version has truly transparent boxes. Many other computer games used dithering, though unlike with console games, it was not expected for the dithering to be blended into solid colors or proper transparency due to the sharper output of PC monitors and lack of processing of the signal. Of particular note are games for Japanese computers, such as the PC-8898, which often featured heavy use of dithering. The intended effects of dithering are often lost in emulation due to the emulators not emulating the system's video output, but rather only the RGB signal the graphics processor generates. The dots or line appear as they actually are with no blurring. There are options to remedy this. Accept the unblended dithering, it's an option. Remove the dithering entirely, requires assets to actually be of higher color palette. Rendering in 32-bit colors in PlayStation emulators achieves this, for instance. Use a blurry or NTSC composite shader, which approximates the blur of the original video encoder. Use the dithering shader designed to specifically target dithered colors, but does not modify the rest of the image. Another option that you will find is the frame skipping option. It's an option allowing you to skip frames and that you can generally find in different course options. It's an option that is allowing you to skip frames. It is generally following the audio buffer to avoid crackling. It improves performance a lot at the expense of visual smoothness. If you choose auto, it will skip frames when the frontend advises to do so. It is sometimes also coming with a manual frame skip option where you determine an audio occupancy percentage threshold below which frames will be skipped. I totally discourage you from using this option, and I will advise to try reducing some quality options like resolution or filtering and shaders you can disable before touching those options. Sometimes in the options you will see one related to HLE usage or the default BIOS. Do you remember in the chapter where I explained if BIOS are legal or not? Then I explained to you that some people did reverse engineering of the original BIOS, creating something with the same function and then using that piece of modified software coming from the hardware directly, and it's okay, because it is covered by the patent law. The common name given to those reverse engineering is HLE. Some emulators give you the choice between using a copy of the original BIOS, or if you don't have one, it can use HLE, standing for High Level Emulation, to emulate the BIOS of the core. Running a real BIOS is generally more compatible, so using HLE should be your last option if you don't have any other choices. Another option that I advise you to turn on is into Settings, Video, and you have the bilinear filtering. If you're playing pixel area games, one of the most important toggles is bilinear filtering, which will switch between giving the game a hard pixelated look if you switch it off, or soft and blurred if it's on. Another very important option that you will find only on the PlayStation Core is the PGXP Precision Geometry Transform Pipeline. That is an enhancement for PlayStation emulation that produces high precision fully 3D geometry data that was not available on the original console hardware. I know it's a specificity for the PlayStation only, but it brought some really improvements to this console emulation, and then it deserves that we talk about it. PGXP attempts to kill two birds with one stone. First, it introduces subpixel precision to get rid of the wobbling polygon issues. Second, it adds perspective correct texturing to stop the texture warping and dancing issues. The subpixel precision, also known as wobbly polygons, can often be noticed on character models. In addition to the models looking very glitchy and wobbly, you can also often notice that their face textures look deformed. If you apply very granular movement to the character, you can often notice a character model's head deforming based on its distance from the camera. For example of this, try to find a scene in Final Fantasy VIII or Resident Evil 1, where the characters are very close to the camera. With no subpixel precision, you would see a continuously changing and deformed face texture on the main characters. The other issue PGXP tries to fix is the lack of perspective correct texturing, also called dancing and warping textures. In many games, you will see the texture maps on the ground dancing and warping as you move around the environment. In addition to this, other games like Ridge Racer, Revolution or Tomb Raider 2 can also sometimes show random color outlines around texture maps while the camera is moving. This, combined with the lack of subpixels precision, can result in a very glitchy look in many PlayStation games. Most PlayStation to PC port didn't put the extra effort into fix these issues either. For instance, the aforementioned issue were fixed in Resident Evil 1 PC, but then by the time we got to Resident Evil 3 Nemesis for PC, we can spot wobbling polygons again on the character models. A similar thing happened with the Final Fantasy series. The issue were fixed for Final Fantasy VII, but Final Fantasy VIII's PC port featured the same subpixel precision issues as the PSX version. Lack of time and effort or optimizing specifically around the PSX limitations are probably a reason for developers taking shortcuts even on far more capable hardware. To activate it, it's very simple, just go into the options of Mednafen PS6 hardware core in RetroArch and set PGXP operation mode to on. You have two options here, the memory, the default enabled mode. This is a less CPU intensive version of PGXP and it also tends to be less buggy than the other one. Try this by default unless you want to experiment. Memory plus CPU, the secondary enabled mode. This is more CPU intensive and can result in geometry glitches. However, it has been demonstrated that it can help reduce wobbliness in polygons even more for certain games, such as Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. There are two other PGXP options which you might want to experiment with. The PGXP Vertex Cache maintains a cache for all the vertices. This might result in better performance, but I recommend you leave it off for the majority of games since it can result in graphics glitches. And then the PGXP Perspective Correct texturing. For most games, you definitely want this enabled. Otherwise, enabling PGXP will only get you subpixel precision. Now I want to talk about compilers, GIT, Dynarec, and others. Just to make sure everyone's on the same page, I will explain quickly what a compiler and more specifically a GIT compiler is during winter. I will take an example here on the Nintendo 64 and I will go into the CPU core and you have the different options here. Broadly speaking, a GIT or just-in-time compiler is a piece of code that translates some kind of program code into machine instructions for the host CPU. The difference between a GIT compiler and a regular compiler is that a GIT compiler performs this translation at runtime hence just in time, rather than compiling the code and saving a binary for later execution. For emulation, the original program code is typically the binary machine code that was intended for the emulated CPU. To give you a concrete example, we can cite the 6502 CPU embedded into the NES console. However, GIT compilation are used for many other kinds of program. Examples include the GIT compilers used by modern browsers to run JavaScript, the hotspot compiler in the JVM, and dynamic language runtimes like PyPy and Lua GIT. GIT compilers are used primarily to speed up execution. A standard interpreter must fetch the code and execute instructions one at a time. Even in a relatively fast language like Rust or C, this incurs some overhead. A GIT compiler, on the other hand, can be run once and emit a blob of machine code which executes an entire emulated function or more in one sequence of instructions. Eliminating that overhead often greatly improves execution speed. However, since the compilation is done at runtime, care must be taken that the GIT compiler itself doesn't run slowly enough to cause performance problems, where an ahead-of-time AOT compiler can spend much more time optimizing the code it generates. In course, you will generally find names of compilers like Pure Interpreter, Dynamic Recompiler, also called Dynarec, or Cached Interpreter. Interpreter is the CPU equivalent of a software renderer. It's slow, but usually has the highest accuracy. Cached Interpreter is like the regular interpreter, but it caches some of the results, which means it doesn't need to recalculate them each time, making it faster. Dynamic Recompiler or Dynarec is the fastest, but can sometimes have some accuracy issues you don't find in the interpreter. My advice here is to use the Dynarec compiler, which is our GIT compiler that I explained previously. It will generally perform the best in all situations. Now we'll talk about video renderer. When talking about pure retro emulation, most emulators are software rendering. Hardware rendering has been introduced in some emulators starting with the 5th generation consoles. We're talking about the Sega Saturn 1994, the Sony PlayStation 1994, and the Nintendo 64 1996. For instance, Mednafen PS6 and PCSX rearmed cores are software renderer. That means they're stuck at native resolution, but they work with any video drivers, GL, Vulkan, D3D, Direct3D, and can use any shaders, whichever ones are appropriate for your desired video driver. Mednafen PS6 hardware HW is hardware rendered. It's the one we installed before, do you remember? And it has GL and Vulkan renderers. Some hardware rendered cores have other renderers as well, such as PPSSPP and Dolphin, while others like MAPEN64 Plus only have GL. These cores need the video driver to match their renderer, and they can use shaders that match the video drivers. So for example, Mednafen PS6 HW and Dolphin Libretro cores both support Vulkan. So you can have your video driver set to Vulkan and they will both work. You can load Slang shaders and they will work. Concerning renderers, Vulkan is the more recent and advanced API of the two and really shines when used with powerful cores like Mednafen PS6 HW hardware, but other cores like MAPEN64 rely on GL drivers. Hopefully MAPEN64 is able to use the Parallely RDP plugin now, and then you can use Vulkan. So I choose the Parallely RDP here, and it will automatically use Vulkan as the renderer backend. Another advice I would like to give you is to switch your GeForce Sync algorithm to adaptive to avoid any low FPS within some games or with some emulators, especially the most recent gen consoles like PS2, aka PCSX2 emulator cores in RetroArch. As a reminder, everyone who already played a game or a video on PC suffered from frame rate stuttering and screen tearing. Stuttering occurs when frame rates fall below the VSync frame rate cap, which is typically 60 frames per second, matching the 60 Hz refresh rate of most monitors and screens. When frame rates dip below the cap, VSync locks the frame rate to the nearest level, such as 45 or 30 frames per second and even less. As performance improves, the frame rate returns to 60. So when VSync is disabled in-game, screen tearing is observed when the frame rate exceeds the refresh rate of the display, 120 frames per second on the 60 Hz display, for instance. This causes screen-wide horizontal tears whenever the camera or viewpoint moves horizontally or vertically. These two can cause eye strain and headaches, but more often it distracts players and ruins immersion. When VSync is enabled and the frame rate drops below the monitor's refresh rate, the frame rate fluctuates widely, causing visible stuttering. Adaptive VSync fixes both problems by unlocking the frame rate when below the VSync cap, which reduces stuttering, and by locking the frame rate when performance improves once more, thereby minimizing tearing. And I noticed in some emulators like PCSX2, for instance, that letting stuttering happening when GPU is dropping below the screen refresh rate leads to a big slowdown, because the emulator, instead of interpreting it as a pure FPS drop, will just render the images in a row without taking care of any timing or tempo. So with VSync on at 60 FPS, if the game drops at 30 FPS, let's say, the game will be slowed down by 50%, and so it will be super slow. Using adaptive fixes the issue, at least for me, reducing those slownesses. I will show you how to do it, it's pretty easy. So you go into your NVIDIA GeForce control panel. Here you go onto Manage 3D Settings. You don't want to touch anything on the global settings, because if you do that, maybe some other games also or some other applications won't work correctly after that. You go into Program Settings, you click on Add, then you have the RetroArch application here. So the location is good for me, but let's say you don't have the RetroArch here, so you will click on Browse. You go onto your Launchbox directory, onto Emulators, RetroArch, and you choose retroarch.exe. Then you can change the option here and put whatever you want. Normally everything is use global setting, it's totally normal. The only thing, so I don't know why the threaded optimization is off. I will say use global setting, okay? The one that you want to change is this one, okay? And on my computer, I have already adaptive mode, okay? But if you don't have the global setting set to adaptive mode, you have to choose this one into the list here, okay? So now I will set up my Launchbox to be Launchbox Premium. So we will be able to use BigBox. I will show you BigBox. Basically, you don't have anything to do here because Launchbox has already imported some games. BigBox should be working right away. So to activate your license is pretty easy. You just have to close Launchbox. You put the license.xml that was provided by Launchbox directly, so you received an email for that, and you launch Launchbox again. And if everything is working well, you should see license to and your name next to this sentence, okay? To finish on that point, Launchbox Premium version. So everything was downloaded, as you can see. The posters, the pictures, the audio. So everything Launchbox downloaded for you so far is there, right? But you want them displayed in the beautiful way with big TV set, for instance, or BigBox on your computer, for instance. So you will need to purchase a Launchbox Premium license to access what we call the BigBox interface. Launchbox Premium gives you access to BigBox as well as additional support for gamepad controllers and custom themes. So this costs a one-off $15 fee for a lifetime license with 1 year of updates. And you can pay a $70 if you prefer a lifetime update. Now I want to talk about EmuMovies. During the asset downloading phase, when importing your games, the artwork is supplied if it is available in the Launchbox Games database, which is being contributed to daily. However, videos are not included, but you can add any videos you'd like or create them yourself. Depending on the size size of your library, you can start with a small library, and every time you add a game, you can add a quick video there. You can also grab some videos on some forums. Coming back to EmuMovies, there is a free account that provides you with images in Launchbox as well as the Launchbox database, so you will be fine with images. Launchbox Premium will supply platform videos for BigBox, but the actual game videos are from EmuMovies and require a premium subscription there, as do music and manual download. Launchbox does not supply game videos, music, or manuals. So if we are going into EmuMovies, so this website here allows you to download the different videos for the games. Let's try to find the prices for that. So here are the prices, barely visible, so I will just highlight them. So you have the basic member, so as I can say, you have other images that can complete the Launchbox database. You have the monthly supporter, so basically at that point you can grab video, snap quality, SQ, HQ, and HD. And you have the possibility to have EmuMovies sync, so I'm pretty sure this thing here is used by the Launchbox calls software, the Launchbox software. And you have the annual supporter or the lifetime. The lifetime is at $60, and so here you don't have to worry about it until you die. So I will come back here. I have my license for Launchbox. I will import another set of ROMs. I don't know what I didn't do. Maybe the SNES. Yeah, the SNES. Click on next. So Super Nintendo Entertainment System, Retroarch, used in their location. Here I have everything downloaded. I will configure my EmuMovies. Just close your eyes, please. Parsing EmuMovies. Alright, click on next. So I will finish to import my game. I will ask him to combine ROMs with a matching title into a single game. So I will go on next, finish. So it will import everything here. We'll go on consoles. I will see this appearing here. So it's downloading, as you can see, a lot of different files, and after that it will do a pass to get the videos from EmuMovies. Okay, so my games are here. As you can see, it's downloading maybe a little bit more assets because basically we are on the premium version, so it's also already something that we can see that it's downloading more stuff. Alright, so it's finished now, and now it's searching EmuMovies. So now it's downloading a lot more information here. Alright, it's finished now. So let's check Fun and Game, for instance. Okay, so if I edit the game, you can see that there is a video that has been downloaded here. Alright, so it worked well. So I just want to come back onto the duplicate ROM files, like this specific example. Okay, so it's the NES. I will import the NES ROM files and I will show you. Okay, so I'm importing that one. Alright, I have a concrete example, you will see. So if I uncheck combine ROMs by matching thing here, I will have 3 entries. Okay, I will have 3 different entries for the European version, Japan version, and USA version of Adventures of Lolo. If I am combining them, it won't be obvious here because it's displaying anyway here, but I will have only 1 entry after that. So I will click on finish and I will show you. Alright, so I will go into Nintendo Entertainment. So as you can see, I have only 1, I don't know what is this one, Magic Kingdom, okay, downloading the asset I guess. So I have only 1 entry here, but if I want to play a specific version, I can go here, right click and play version. So I can play the European, Japan, and US version. Just as a side note, if you click on play here, it's always the USA version that will be chosen by default, so just keep this one in mind. Alright, now I will go here and I want to launch BigBox because now we have BigBox, right? Alright, welcome to BigBox. So everything is here. As you can see, I can move with my keyboard. What I want now is to go into options. I want to go into controller. I want to enable game controller, so now I can use my controller. Another thing I want to check is the video. So VLC is selected because we selected it into Launchbox, so it's here. So I come back here and now I can go everywhere. So if I go into Genesis, as you can see, we don't have a lot of things moving, we don't have any videos because we downloaded it with the free version, right? If I'm going into Super NES, now it's different. We have the videos appearing here. It's amazing, it's super cool. Alright, okay, now I will show you how to use into RetroArch the system of multi-disc, because it's very important to be able to swap your discs. For instance, the Dracula one has 2 discs, but it's 2 different CUE, so it's not exactly the same way of swapping disc, okay? So I will start by showing you how to swap disc with different files. So I will run Dracula Unleashed. I will press start. So I am on the first CD, right? So I will go into RetroArch, I will go into the option disk control, I will eject the disk, okay? I will load a new disk, and this time I will select, because RetroArch will show you the different files into the same folder, so I will select the disk 2. So now I insert the disk, and now it's done. I will go now onto the Sony PlayStation, and as I said, I will do a test with Final Fantasy, so I will just go into view list view, because it's maybe easier to check this one. Where is Final Fantasy? Okay, right here. So I will launch the game, it will pass the first disk, okay? Alright, and now for this one, because we have a PBP file extension that is grouping all the 4 disks of Final Fantasy, I will eject the disk, and instead of going into load new disk, I will click on current disk index and switch to the second one, for instance, and I will insert the disk back. So it's the way to do it with the PBP extension file. Okay, and one last thing I want to show you now is to the import of another kind of game. Okay, so I have Steam games on my computer. I will click on Steam. For this one, you have to enter your Steam custom URL to be able to give the information of the games you have on your computer to Launchbox. So you enter your ID, you have to get the ID, you have to get an API key directly from the website. So here's my key, next, and the platform would be Windows, course, because it came for Windows. And here we go. So it detected that I have all that games, not necessarily installed, but all the games installed are checked. I can definitely check the other ones, but it's just that it's not installed right now on my computer. So it's importing the different games, getting the trailer videos and things like that. Exactly the same as importing other system or platform. And here we go. We put the view in images view, and everything is here. So I can basically launch the different games, and it will automatically launch with Steam. And now, as a bonus, I will show you how to add a video, a startup video, into your BigBox. So to do so, to get BigBox startup videos, you have a special link that I will put into the description of the video that you can go, and you have the choice here of several videos, right? So let's check this one. Okay,
I'm launching your gaming system now. One moment, please.
Wow, interesting. So I will check this, I will get this one, okay? You have to be a member of the Launchbox website, so you have to sign in to be able to download the video. So download this file, so you can get several versions, I would say. The 15 second is really, I mean, is like in between 5 and 30. I mean, it's obvious, sorry to say obvious thing, but I would say it's like the good time. 15 seconds is like the real good time to have a startup video. In my opinion, you can choose, depending on your preferences, 5 or 30 seconds. So I will take this one. I will get the video that is here. So I will cut and go into the Launchbox directory, into videos, and you will create a new directory there that you will call startup. You will go into startup, you paste your wonderful video, and if you launch BigBox,
I'm launching your gaming system now. One moment, please.
It's wonderful, right? It's working pretty well. So we have to wait for 15 seconds. But for me, having an intro video is definitely a great thing, and it's something that will impress everyone when you launch BigBox, right? So it will be awesome for your friends to see that. So definitely I recommend that to you, and now you have the procedure to put the video you want. You can put a video of yourself talking, saying, hey, have a good night, and you put this video into the startup video folder of Launchbox, and every time you launch BigBox, you will see your face saying, hey, have a great time, or have a great night, or something like that. You can do whatever you want. It's what is very interesting, this kind of flexibility. But go into the forum link that is into the description and choose whatever you want. You have a bunch of videos and very great video. So thank you very much, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't hesitate to add comments, and if you have any questions, you can go into the comment section below and ask for help. It will be a pleasure for me to help you, or maybe to find someone else to help you if I don't have the answer to your questions. I had a very high level of pleasure to make this tutorial, and I hope you enjoyed and maybe had the same level of pleasure than me watching it. So again, I will post the link of the program that I am using and that I designed and developed. So the link to my Patreon page, so you have the opportunity to get the program to help you rename the files before importing the different ROMs into Launchbox, and it will help you also for different other systems. Thank you very much, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.